A wolf should never have become a dog. It sounds obvious, but think about it. If you were living through an ice age winter tens of thousands of years ago, a wolf was not a potential pet. It was not a cute animal waiting for a name. It was a competitor. Wolves hunted many of the same animals humans hunted. They traveled in packs. They could smell things you could not smell, hear things you could not hear, and follow prey through darkness that would leave you almost completely blind. They were fast, patient, intelligent, and armed with jaws powerful enough to tear through flesh and crush bone. If wolves appeared beyond the edge of your campfire at night, the sensible reaction was not to whistle and offer them a blanket. It was to react with your spear. And yet, somehow wolves became dogs. Not merely animals that tolerate us, animals that sleep in our beds, animals that guide people who cannot see, search collapsed buildings, protect livestock, detect explosives, comfort children, steal socks, panic during thunderstorms, and somehow know the precise moment you open a package of cheese in another room. There are hundreds of millions of dogs alive today. Tiny dogs, massive dogs, hairless dogs, fluffy dogs, dogs with jobs, dogs with sweaters, dogs that appear to spend most of their lives asleep on furniture they were originally forbidden to climb onto. And every one of them belongs to a story that began with wolves. The strangest part is that humans may not have started the process. Some wolves may have started it themselves. To understand how, imagine a small group of hunter-gatherers moving across a frozen landscape near the end of the last ice age. There are no cities, no farms, no roads, no permanent grocery stores waiting over the next hill. Every meal depends on finding animals, tracking them, killing them, carrying what you can, and surviving long enough to do it again. Humans and wolves were both social hunters. Both species worked in groups. Both pursued large prey. Both defended territory. Both could injure or kill each other. In other words, wolves were not obvious candidates for domestication. They were rivals. But during the coldest winters, that rivalry may have developed a loophole. Humans need more than protein to survive. We also need fat or carbohydrates. And during harsh ice age winters, many prey animals became extremely lean. A successful hunt could leave a group of humans with more lean meat than their bodies could safely use. That sounds impossible. Too much meat? But there is a limit to how much protein the human body can process. Wolves had fewer problems with that. They could survive on lean meat for long periods. So after a human hunt, there may have been portions of an animal that humans could not use efficiently. Lean scraps, bones, sinew, skin, pieces left behind because they were difficult to carry or less valuable than fat. To a hungry wolf watching from the darkness, a human camp was not merely dangerous, it was an opportunity. At first, most wolves probably stayed far away. That was the safe choice. Some may have approached too aggressively and been driven off or killed, but a few wolves behaved differently. They were slightly less fearful, slightly less aggressive, slightly more curious. They waited beyond the firelight until the humans moved away. They then crept forward and ate what was left behind. The next day, they followed the humans again, and the next day, and the next. This was not friendship. Not yet, anyway. It was scavenging, but scavenging changed the rules. A wolf that could tolerate humans gained access to food without risking an injury while hunting a large animal. A wolf that became too aggressive near camp became a threat, and threatening wolves did not last long around humans armed with spears. Over many generations, the wolves best suited to living near people may have been the calmer ones, the less fearful ones, the ones willing to wait, the ones willing to watch, the ones willing to come slightly closer. Nobody needed to sit down and invent the dog. Nobody needed a breeding plan. Nobody needed to look at a wolf and imagine that one day its descendants would wear birthday hats and beg for pieces of toast. Natural selection may have started the process quietly, one cautious meal at a time, and we know that selecting animals for calmer behavior can produce surprisingly dramatic results. In the late 1950s, Soviet geneticist Dmitry Baliev and researcher Lyudmila Trut began a famous experiment using silver foxes. They were trying to understand what happens when animals are repeatedly selected for tameness. Each generation, they allowed the least fearful and least aggressive foxes to reproduce. They were not selecting foxes because of their ears, or their fur, or the shape of their tails. They were selecting behavior. But over time, the foxes began to change in other ways. Some wagged their tails, some sought human attention, some developed white markings, some developed floppier ears or curled tails. The experiment does not prove that dogs emerge in exactly the same way, but it demonstrates something important. When animals are repeatedly selected for reduced fear and aggression, physical changes can sometimes follow. The earliest animals living near human camps may not have looked like modern dogs. They may still have looked mostly like wolves. But over time, some may have become smaller, calmer, and easier to tolerate. Not fully wild, not fully domesticated. Something in between. And eventually, humans must have noticed that these animals were useful. A wolf-like animal near camp can hear danger long before a sleeping human can. It can smell predators approaching. It can react to strangers. It can track prey. It can find wounded animals. It can follow a scent across ground that looks empty to us. At some point, the animal waiting outside the campfire may have become more valuable alive than dead. Perhaps humans began throwing food toward the calmer animal. Perhaps they raised pups near camp. Perhaps certain wolves began traveling with people as they moved through the landscape. Perhaps the relationship started differently in different places. We still do not know the exact sequence. The earliest stages of domestication are frustratingly difficult to see because a calm wolf does not leave behind a calm skeleton. But new evidence is bringing the story into focus. In 2026, researchers recovered ancient DNA from dog remains found at Pinabari in Turkey and Gove's Cave in Britain. The Pinabari dog lived around 15,800 years ago. The Goff's cave dog lived around 14,300 years ago. And by roughly 14,000 years ago, genetically similar dogs were already spread across a huge area stretching through Europe and Anatolia. That means dogs were not an isolated experiment happening beside one forgotten campfire. They were already moving through the Ice Age world with human groups that were culturally and genetically distinct from one another. People may have been exchanging dogs. Think about that. Long before agriculture, long before cities, long before written language, long before metal tools, humans may have already valued dogs enough to carry them across vast distances and share them between communities. And once wolves became dogs, the transformation did not stop. When humans eventually began farming and eating more starch-rich foods, dogs adapted again. Compared with wolves, many dogs developed a greater ability to digest starch. They were not simply living near humans. Their bodies were changing to fit the human world. But the most remarkable change may not have happened in their stomachs. It may have happened in their faces. Dogs are unusually good at watching us. They study our eyes, they follow our gestures, they notice when we are paying attention. They look toward humans when they need help. And when dogs and their owners gaze at each other, both can experience increases in oxytocin, a hormone involved in social bonding. Wolves raised by humans did not show the same pattern in one influential study. Dogs also developed facial muscles that helped them raise their inner eyebrows, creating the expression people often describe as puppy dog eyes. That look may seem harmless, but it is extremely effective. A dog can make a face that triggers an emotional reaction in a human almost instantly. Over thousands of years, the dogs best able to communicate with us may have received more food, more protection, and more care. Dogs learned how to read humans, and humans became exceptionally easy for dogs to manipulate. But there is a point where the story stops being merely about food, alarms, hunting, or survival. In Germany, archaeologists discovered the remains of a young dog buried beside two humans in Bonn Oberkassel. The burial dates back more than 14,000 years. The dog appeared to have suffered from a serious illness while it was still a puppy. Without care, it probably would not have survived for long. It may have needed water brought to it, food, warmth, cleaning, protection, time. And during that illness, puppy could not have been much use to anybody. It could not guard the camp effectively, it could not track prey, it could not help during a hunt. Keeping it alive required effort from humans living in a world where effort was expensive. Food mattered, energy mattered, every hour mattered, and yet somebody appears to have cared for that puppy anyway. That is the moment the story changes, because this is no longer a hungry wolf collecting scraps beyond the edge of a camp. This is an animal inside the human circle, an animal worth feeding when it cannot work, an animal worth protecting when it cannot protect you, an animal whose survival matters simply because it matters. Somewhere across thousands of years, scavenging became cooperation. Cooperation became trust. Trust became attachment. And attachment became something close to love. That is how wolves accidentally became dogs. Not because one brilliant human invented them. Not because wolves suddenly stopped being dangerous. Not because the wilderness became gentle. Not because a few wolves were curious enough to approach a campfire. Because humans sometimes had food they could not use. Because calmer animals survived near people, because both species gradually discovered that they were stronger together than they were apart. And tonight, a dog may fall asleep somewhere near you, on a couch, at the foot of a bed, curled into a blanket, completely unaware that its ancestors once stood beyond a firelight, watching humans from the darkness, waiting, listening, deciding whether to take one more careful step closer, and eventually they did.